So let's take a look at Google's Map Sdk for iOS. And what I want to do is walk you through getting this set up and functioning. It turns out, at least as of today, the documentation on the Google site seems to be out of sync with the actual SDK. So if you follow it too closely, you'll find yourself running down some dead ends and some frustrations. And there's also not a lot of info there, at least as of right now, on how to deal with this if you're working in Swift. So I want to just give you a quick tutorial on how to get set up and running. We'll get a simple map up, drop some markers on it, play with core location a little bit, and so forth, and get the rudimentaries up and running, and then we'll put this code out in the class GitHub repo so you can pull it and use it as a functioning example. So in the previous demo, we showed you how to use CocoaPods, and we used that to add Google Maps as a pod to this particular project. And so now what I want to do is continue on and write some Swift code that takes advantage of that pod and gets some Google Map content up in front of us. So since I'm working in Swift, the very first thing I need is a bridging header, because the Google Maps SDK is obviously written in Objective-C. So I'm going to use the same technique we used last time in Xcode to create a bridging header. I'm just going to go in and create a dummy Objective-C source here. I'll call it my junk controller, and I'm just going to delete it. I'm just using this to get it to generate a bridging header. So make sure you set your language to Objective-C, and then, okay, you gotta actually select the project, so I did this wrong. Let me delete those and try this again. So we will delete those guys, and this time I'm going to select this folder here, say new file, and try this again. Alright, so when I add it to the actual source folder here, it tells me, hey, do you want me to configure a bridge? We'll say yes, and sure enough, down here you can see we got what we wanted, and then I'm just going to delete these guys. And there's my bridging header, and what I need to do here is import the Objective-C headers that I want to have visible in my Swift source code. And I only need a single one here right now. I'm going to have pound import, and then we'll have Google Maps / Google Maps.h. This is one of the things on the Google documentation. They tell you just to pound import Google Maps.h, and there is no such header, so that's a problem. But anyways, if you do that, that'll take care of that. And having done that, the next thing we need to do is we need to create an API key for our Google Maps. So every time we access Google Maps, it's going to use this API key, which is tied to our application, and this is how Google keeps track of which apps are using the APIs. So in order to do this, we need to go back to the Google website, and we need to go to their developer console, and we need to create an application on the developer console and then request a key for the application. So this is very analogous to what we did last time when we were looking at Parse and Facebook. We also had to create application instances there and associate it with our iOS app. So that's really the same thing. So I'm going to go over to my browser here and go to the developer console. So we'll go to the Google developer console, and once I'm already logged into Google, so I'm going to see it straight away, and I'll create a project here, and we'll call this my Google Maps demo. So I'm just going to fill that in, Click Next, and it's going to take a few seconds for this to create this app. You can see it kind of spinning down there on the bottom. And once that settles down and creates an instance, I can go in there and create a key. And here we are. And so first thing I'm going to do is go into APIs, and these are the various APIs, and what I want to do is enable the Google Maps SDK for iOS. So I'm going to click on this, and it says, do you want to enable? And I'll click the blue button that says enable that, and then I'll back up. And if you were going to use the Google Places API, which is also in the same SDK, you'd want to click on that and enable that. And I think that's pretty much it. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, so if you wanted to use Street View images or any of these other things, you'd want to do that. So I think the geocoder might need this one. So you got to read the documentation and figure out what features in the SDK you want to use. And so those two that we enabled will be sufficient for what we're going to do today. So once I've enabled the API for this particular app, then I need to go in and create a key. So to do that, I'm going to go to Credentials, and then under Credentials you'll see Public API Access, and I'll create a key, and then I'm simply going to select what type of key I want, and I want an iOS key. So I'll click that, and then one of the things it needs is what is the bundle of your bundle ID for your app that you want to access this with. So I'm going to switch back to Xcode, and in Xcode, if I select my target up there and go to General, you'll see that and this is annoying because it never selects the last part, so we'll just have to remember that, Google Maps demo. So I'll go over here, paste, Chrome doesn't like me, so let me just do this by hand. I think I called it my Google Maps demo, and let me just confirm that. No, it's just Google Maps demo. Okay.
CIS in the...
Oh, thank you, because that would have definitely given us problems. Does that look right to everybody? Okay, so we create that, and now it's created my API key. So I'm going to need this piece of information. So I'm going to select this and copy it. And then I'm going to return to my project. And over here in my app delegate, I need to add a call. So I'm going to say import. Actually, I don't have to import. I simply am going to go right here and say GMS services dot provide API key, and I pass that in as a string. Oh shoot, Chrome is just totally not working for me. So I'm Command C'ing. Alright, so I got to restart Chrome. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, we'll see if this works better. That's better. So that's a nasty Chrome bug that's been bugging me the last couple of weeks. So that basically tells this app when it runs, this is the API key that you're going to be using for Google Maps. So the next thing I want to do is get a map up on the screen. By default, my storyboard you'll see that there is simply a empty view controller, and the root view here is just a blank view. And so I'm going to just go into my code and code up by hand a Maps view controller and have it fill that parent view container that's out there. So let me go ahead and do that. So the first thing I do is create a location location manager, and so I'll say let my location manager equal CL location manager. And I'm going to set my view controller as the delegate, so when these location updates come in, I want to have them call back on my view controller. So I need to specify that my view controller is going to implement the cLocation manager delegate. Having done that, the next thing I'm going to do is set that delegate. So I'll say location location manager delegate is equal to self. And then I'm going to ask for permission. So my application needs to get permission from the user in order to use this. And we can do that by simply calling location manage request. Why isn't it? Oh, spelled it wrong there. Okay, so we can say request always, request state for region. I want to say request when in use. So in other words, I want to be able to get the user's location when my application is in the foreground, when it's being used. And having done that, I need to implement some delegate methods because this is going to happen asynchronously. So I'm going to ask, but when I return from this, I don't necessarily have permissions at this point. Okay, so I'm going to have to implement callback methods on that delegate protocol in order to take action when I finally get permissions. And so to do that, I'm going to implement the method we talked about a few minutes ago. So it's called location manager change authorization status. And I'm going to get two pieces of information here, the actual manager as well as the status change. And there's a couple things we'll do here. So this is, Roland, I actually stole your code that you put in Laker Mobile. So the first thing we're going to do is write this function. And what this guy is going to do is it's going to, if we want to get location updates, we're going to call this with a true. And if we want to turn off location updates, we're going to call it with a false. We'll come back and implement this later. And I think here, yeah, I think, well, I'll do what Roland did. I'm not sure if this is the right thing to do, though. So you turned it off and then back on. Okay, that works, but we'll come back to this. Let's get the map view up, and then we'll go in here. And I want to do a couple of things here. I want to get a map up, and I want to have the map update in real time my current location on my device with a little blue dot. Okay, so I want to turn that on. And then I want to, independent of that, I want to put my own markers on the map. And I actually want to be able to interact with those markers too. So when users click on them, I want to be able to get callbacks and do stuff. And the other thing I want to do is I want the map to zoom in on a particular location. In particular, GVSU's main campus. Okay, so I want to accomplish all that, and it's fairly straightforward to do all that in just a few lines of code. So we've requested permissions, and so I'm just going to go ahead and set up that map view now so it comes up on the Grand Valley campus. So we'll say and we can say camera with latitude, and Roland looked these up for me, very nice of him, 96356, and longitude is minus 85.8899. Okay, so that's the position we want to center in on, and zoom level is 14.7. And then we'll go ahead and create our map view. So we'll say map view is going to be a GMS map view. And we can pass, or we can call map with frame. And for frame, if we say CG rect 0, it will actually fill the space, and we'll give it the camera. So there's my map view. And there's all kinds of settings. If you go look at the documentation on Google's website for GMS Map View, there's all kinds of settings out there that we can do. For example, we can turn on the compass button. So if we want it to position on our current, no, compass button actually turns north to the top of the screen. So we could say something like map view .settings .compass button equals true, and that will turn that on. And there's a number of other things that we can play with. But one thing we do have to do is we need to now take this view that we just created and replace that view that's kind of that blank view that's out in a hierarchy. So all we do is say self.view, so remember that's a view controller property, is going to be equal to map view, and that by itself should take care of getting this thing out into our view hierarchy. Now, there is one more thing we got to do before we can run this, and this literally wasted 2 hours of my day today. If you want this thing to ask the user for permission, so let me just run it for you first. Okay, notice it did exactly what we want it to do. All right, but one of the things I want to do is I want this thing to report my current location, and I want to turn that on. I want to put it on the map. I want to show where I'm at right now. So I'm going to write the code for you, and then there's one little itty-bitty detail that, again, Google does not document that frustrated me for hours today. So let's go back down here, and let's assume that our location is updating. So we're going to override our view did load. Our view will appear. Let's do did appear. I think that's all we need. And then in did appear, we will call the super class and we'll simply call update location here as well with a true. And then down here, and this guy, we're going to first check if we got authorization. So I also want a reference to my view. So I'm going to temporarily just say map view is equal to self.view casted as a GMS map view. And we'll say let status equal CL location manager, and then we can ask it, what is your authorization status? Did the user give you permissions yet? And then if we're trying to get this going, so we can say if running, so if we passed in true, then we can tell the location manager to start updating the locations, right? So this is going to cause it now, as it gets locations, it's going to start calling back and passing them to us. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to tell it to enable our location. So we can just set a property to true and it will automatically put our location on the screen, our current location. So we can say map view dot my location enabled equals true, and that will turn it on. But the other thing we can do is there's a button, okay, that you can click, and if you're not currently zoomed on your location, it'll animate and pan the map over to where you currently are. So we'll turn that on as well. So we'll say map view dot settings dot my location button. Just like that. Oh, sorry, it's getting really late here. And otherwise, oh, I'm sorry, I had to have one more condition in here. So if running, but I don't want to do this or try doing this unless I have permissions. So the other condition I need is if my location, if my status is equal to authorized when in use, because that's what I'm expecting. And so this would be my status. So if that's true, do this, this, and that. Otherwise, we're simply going to tell the location manager to stop updating. Oops. The location, and we'll turn off those buttons. And we'll turn off our current location. Alright, so in theory, when we run this now, we'd expect a little blue dot to show up. But the first thing we'd expect is we'd expect this thing to ask for permission. And when you run it, you'll notice that it never asks for permission, which is just baffling. And it turns out there is a single entry in the info file that you have to put up there or it won't ask for permissions. So let me get this. I've got it over here in this other project. So you need to add NS location when in use, this guy right here. So if you go down to your supporting files, find your info plist, and then select the top level, hit plus, and paste that guy. So it's NS location when in use, usage description. All right, and interestingly, if you drag a map view, an Apple map view in your storyboard into a view controller, it automatically adds this. Okay, but of course we're not doing that. And so I've never found this before because I've always replaced standard Apple Maps with Google Maps. And this is the first time I created a brand new project with Google Maps that didn't have it before. All right, and so that's the difference. And now if we run it, now it actually will ask you for permissions. Okay, so if we allow it, okay, now you don't see anything because where are we? Well, right now our simulator is not set up to tell anything about locations. So we can insert kind of a fictitious location into this by simply clicking down here in the Debug tab. If you click this little blue guy here, and we could say, well, simulate New York. Okay, now if we go back to our emulator and we say zoom out, sorry, there it is, New York. Okay, it's not exactly New York though, is it? What? Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. We're just spun way crazy around here. That looks better. It's kind of hard to run this panning and zooming. So let's rerun. So we'll get it back to Grand Valley here. So we're on Grand Valley, and let's go ahead and use these coordinates that Roland gave us. So what we can do is we can click this little guy here and say, no, not that one, I'm sorry. It's not available there, but it is available up here. So if we go back to the simulator, and we say debug location, custom location. And on this, we can enter in our Grand Valley coordinates and minus 85.8899. And now it puts the dot right in the middle of campus. Okay. One more quick thing, and then we'll turn you guys loose. So let's add a simple marker onto the screen, and we can do that by just creating GMS markers. So we can say let marker equal GMS marker, and the marker position is equal to, and then we can just add a location coordinate 2D make and give it a latitude, longitude. So we'll give it the same thing here, 4296356 with a longitude of minus 85.8899. And we can say its title. So if you click on this thing, in the bigger font will be GVSU, and its snippet of text will be Allendale, Michigan. And let's just do that for now. And we can also make it appear in an animated kind of pop. So we can say marker dot appear animation equals K GMS marker animation pop. And I keep leaving out the R in marker. And then the last thing we'll do here is stick it onto the app. And we can do that like that. And so let's go ahead and run this. Okay, and they're both on the same place, but this little marker here pops up, and if I click on that marker, it pops up this information that I set. Now I could customize this, so let's drag, I've got a little GVSU icon, on my desktop. So let's grab this icon and move it over here. So we'll copy it into my project, and then let me just check the size on this. Yeah, that's a little big. Let's make it smaller. So 35 by 35. And then if we go down to our code again, we can say something like marker.icon equals UI image and then just give it that name. And if I run that, instead of the little standard red marker, we end up with a custom marker. Okay, one more thing. Let's say we actually want to interact with that marker. In other words, when somebody clicks on it, we want to get a callback in our view controller so we can actually do something other than pop up that silly thing. So to do that, we need to implement the Gms Map View Delegate. So we'll go in here and we'll implement the Gms Map View Delegate. And there's a whole bunch of methods, but the one I'm going to override, I just care about the tapping right now. So I'll say funct map view, and I want did tap marker. And I guess for now, I'll just say something like this. I'll say print line, you just tapped the marker.title marker. And the other thing, I need to return a value here. So if I return true, I'm telling the framework, I've dealt with it, you don't need to do anything more. If I return false, it'll actually keep doing the standard default behavior. So that's what I'll do for now. Okay, and if we rerun this, well, there's one more thing I got to do. So I implemented the delegate, but I never set it. So I need to tell that GMS map view. So I need to say map views delegate is equal to self. Now if we run it, okay, watch down here in that debug window when I click. Okay, it gives me that callback.